I'd love that. I'd love that. I'd love that. I'd love that.
The service shop is the only stop
love that.
for the soda you need.
I'd love that.
The service shop, yeah, come and drop in
love that.
on Halifax Street. We have sofa designed for you. Choose your fabric, match your curtains too. The service shop, baby, get on your knees.
I love that.
What you think? Don't you do a thing until you see the service
I
shop.
love that.
That's gold.
There we go. That was a lovely cover of the Sofa Shop, Tim. It was very familiar sounding.
That was haunting. That was weird. Very strange.
Haunting is a good word for it.
My goodness. Yes. I'd forgotten that you'd sent it to me and to play, and I played it just when you sent it, reminding me that it was going to be on the show, and the family heard it. And yes, they all stopped and looked in aghast. What the heck is that? That's bizarre.
The mysterious email that came with it simply says, "My name is Tim and I'm a minister at Malvern Uniting Church in Adelaide, Australia." Anyway, very clever. Very
Creative,
clever.
yes.
What do you think when you hear your laugh?
People mention it, and I never notice it. You don't think of your own laugh as being anything distinct, but I kind of see what people mean now. Having listened to it, the episodes of the podcast, I realise, oh yeah, I'm always going on and on and on.
It's very honky. Honky.
Honky.
Yeah, it honks.
Wow, that doesn't sound terribly endearing. Like, you can't choose your laugh, can you? I mean,
No.
it just comes out naturally. It's one of those things.
No.
I mean, if you spend your life faking a laugh, you're just missing out on the best part of life itself. I mean, you just got to go with what you got. Yeah.
Do you think laughing is the best part of life?
I think it's one of the best parts of life. It's one of the things I enjoy the most.
Yeah.
Joyful, it's marvellous. Yeah, imagine never laughing.
Yeah, that would not be good.
You can't imagine that around me because I'm such a classy comedian.
Yeah, well, no, exactly. Exactly. I'm blessed.
Your wife has said that I'm the only one who makes you laugh in a way that makes your shoulders jump up and down. I was so proud when I heard that.
Very nice. So, parish notices is something we like to do at the start of the show. And Tim, you've got like the most parish of parish notices, haven't you?
Oh, yes, yes. Word has come through that one of our colonels, Unmade colonels, Colonel Katrina, has had a baby.
Ah,
A little colonel. Yes.
a little chicken nugget.
A little nugget, that's right. That's wonderful news. A massive congratulations to the colonel.
I think I'm divulging information I'm allowed to divulge here, but I think either the day of or at the very latest the day after the birth, the Colonel and Mr. Colonel actually enlisted their youngster as a Patreon supporter. Our youngest Patreon supporter.
Yes, incredible. Yes. That's a challenge for people, isn't it? To have children and see who can beat the record to get in there and enroll them as patron supporters the quickest.
I think it may be accurate to say they've enrolled their child as a Patreon supporter earlier than like a school or even like registered the birth with the government.
Oh, indeed. Yeah, the name. You only get to doing the name a few days later, really. Or as long as you like, you know, within reason. But yeah, there's other paperwork and stuff. This is definitely way higher up on the list, as it should be.
Does that mean if, like, even though a name has been decided, if the name hasn't technically been registered yet, we have an unnamed patron?
Yes, that's true.
The unnamed patron. I like that. Congratulations to the Colonel and family. And we look forward to seeing pictures of another bald human that looks like most other bald humans.
And this is where your comments about all babies looking the same slightly come back to bite you a little bit. But you're holding
Stand by it.
All right.
Stand by it. I saw you sent me a picture of the Colonel and the baby, and yeah, Lots like a baby.
That was actually what we did. To protect some privacy, I just grabbed a picture from Storyblocks and sent that to you. Said, it's the Colonel's baby. Distribute it widely. It's a good-looking baby.
No one will know. They all look the same.
This is a big incentive, though. Moment of inspiration for other civilians, not just colonels, but other civilians, to get out there and to multiply and to enroll them as unnamed civilians. Sure, that's the kind of investment that's going to take 9 months to pay off, but still.
We're ready for it. We'll be here. We'll be here awaiting your Patreon sign-up. In a recent episode, Tim, ridiculously in my opinion, encouraged people to write in letters of complaint about the Unmade podcast. And this is something people have done with vigour. So I guess I did say I'd...
Unleashed the wrath of thousands of people, yes.
I'm going to read some of them. Some of them are kind of like a bit complimentary too, and I like those ones, so I'm going to favour those ones. Here we go.
Letters of complaint.
Dear Tim and Brady, I'm writing to complain about a string of incidents that have occurred in the last few episodes of the podcast. You probably know what I'm referring to. Allow me to elaborate. I usually listen to podcasts to help me fall asleep. In the past, the Unmade podcast has been unusually helpful in doing so. However, episodes have gotten more and more interesting, and I'm having trouble falling asleep while listening to the podcast. I suggest to the both of you that the episodes become less interesting. Perhaps you can try using a more monotonous voice and exclude any laughter. Try to stay away from special episodes because they are unbearably captivating. If helpful, I can rate the episodes on a scale of 1 to 10 of how interesting they are. I would aim for no more than a 3 on the scale. Any higher and I'm too interested and cannot sleep. Regards, Nicolay.
Well, that's up there with my complaints to KFC, really, where...
The backhanded complaint.
They are. Yes, that's right, yes.
A lot of people get in touch saying they use the Unmade podcast to help them sleep. How do you feel about that?
I think that's fine. I know once upon a time I would have thought it was, it must mean that we're monotonous or boring, but I know that I have used podcasts I love and find interesting to fall asleep to. There's something comforting about them if they're familiar.
That is true, but I do have podcasts that are too good to fall asleep to.
Yes.
Like, that are too interesting and funny and engaging, and we're clearly not falling into that category most of the time.
No.
And I have other ones that I think are a bit boring, like they'll talk about, international politics and things, and while I do like them, I do find it very easy to disengage and fall asleep and realise I haven't been listening. And I'm worried that we're in that category.
Oh, dear. Have you ever gone to sleep to the Unmade podcast?
No, I never have. Have you?
I have once because
While we were recording?
Yeah, that's right. That's why I've switched from iced coffee to Coke tonight just to sort of keep me going engaged. I once woke up in the morning and you had released an episode overnight. So laying there, I listened to it and went back to sleep. I just dozed off again and then woke up again and went, oh, right, and now I've got to get up. So
okay,
I fell asleep to it, which is, I think, forgivable. Maybe it's worse because I was actually trying to listen to it and yet I was overcome by sleep. And I'd already slept for 8 hours.
I'm totally up for Nicolay going through and rating every episode on this 1 to 10 scale of interestingness. I'd be very curious to see that.
Yeah. What about which parts of the episodes, rating different segments and...
How hard do you want Nicolay to work? Graph every episode as it goes up and down in interestingness, this whole, Get to work, Nicolay, you offered, now you got to do it.
Letters of complaint.
Here's another one, similar kind of theme. Dear Tim and Brady, in a recent run of errands, I was listening to the podcast, as one does when in need of quality entertainment. And it was amazing. However, the episode was almost too engaging. While I was doing my regular grocery shopping, listening to Tim describe the spoon of the week, I got distracted and almost bumped into an old lady. Now, granted, I didn't bump into the old lady, and she was perfectly fine. But imagine a worse situation. It would probably have been frightening for her. Thus, I would like to request that the podcast be, in fact, less interesting, so that listeners who tend to listen while out and about will be less distracted. Maybe Tim could describe less interesting spoons, or you two could share less interesting ideas. From Bren in Singapore. Here's another call for us to be less interesting.
Oh, look, people, I don't think you've quite got the hang of the letters of complaint. Like...
Yeah. Damn it, Tim is just too handsome.
I'd like to see what happens when any of these people sue someone. It's almost like they turn up with a bucket of cash and say, oh, look, excuse me, sir, here's $10,000 to start behaving yourself. Please don't do it again.
All right, here's another one. I can't imagine I'll be the only person who finds this one aspect of your otherwise wonderful podcast particularly troubling, so please forgive me if this is one of many similar complaints. With that said, I cannot say how much it bothers me that we, the faithful listeners, have no idea what the nationality of Tim's father is. One would imagine Australian given Tim's nationality, but why keep us wondering? It would be the work of a moment to let us know. Australian? Canadian? Nigerian? Your fans want to know. With thanks for your quick response, Chris. Tim, is this a secret you're willing to reveal? What nationality was your father?
I'm proud of my Nigerian father. He's a wonderful man. Well, I wouldn't be the Dutch rap star that I am if I didn't have a Dutch father. So I owe it all to him.
Is een bankkantoor. Passant der pot de jeep soepetje.
Did your dad retain his Dutch citizenship or did he become Australian?
No. Unfortunately for me, he became nationalised as an Australian. And he did that just a few months before I was born. Literally, Mum was pregnant with me. And it's really frustrating because if I'd been born when he did it, then I would have had some claim to getting a Dutch passport, which would have been really handy, you know, with the EU and everything. But I missed out. And the reason he went and got nationalised was just because he got a job working for the Australia Post. And you have to be an Australian citizen to work at Australia Post.
Really?
Well, you did at that time. So that's the reason he did it. And there was nothing like dual citizenship at that stage. So he gave it up, and that was a bit unfortunate for me. I found that out when I was in my late teens and looking at doing some backpacking or something and realised, oh, what a shame.
So your dad's a dinky-die Australian then?
Yes. Well, he was before he died.
Well, what, did he become Dutch again then? Or?
Is he in Dutch heaven or Australian heaven?
I don't know. I reckon Dutch heaven sounds like it'd be pretty cool.
That's right.
Do you think your dad identified as Dutch though, didn't he? Like, he was pretty proud of the Dutchness.
He was funny because he was so overtly Dutch. You know, his accent was so strong to people, and we had so much Dutch stuff around the house. And even now I realise condiments we had in the house that I thought everyone had were actually Dutch things. I've seen them at Dutch shops and go, oh, okay, that's why we had that. So I guess it was, but he loved Australia. He really loved it. And when we went back over there, he just wanted to come home, back to the nice, warm Australia. Yeah.
Back to his spoons.
Back to his spoons and bland suburbia. Ooh.
You know how, like, in England, lots of English people think I sound Australian, and when I come back to Australia, a lot of you guys think I sound a little bit English. Did your dad get that? Would he go back to Holland and everyone there would say, oh, Jerry, you sound so Australian now? Yes,
I remember him saying that, yeah. Yeah, they found him very Australian, and I think they even found some of his ways, his personality attributes. I remember there was a little bit of tension he talked about, or maybe Mum told me about Dad's Australianness, and he wasn't. He'd become, I guess we call them a second culture person. You know, they've or a third culture person, I should say. You know what I mean? You don't quite fit 100% anywhere. You're a bit of the two. But he found it hard going back, and I think they found him hard too. And a little bit like you trip over the small differences, he was tripping over them too, even though I guess he went home with an attitude of, well, here I am and this is my home and I'm Dutch. And they're sort of, well, hang on a second, you've, you know, got your clogs on backwards and you've forgotten the little things that you thinking you're so proud of.
Yeah.
It's like when you come back to Adelaide and you pretend to know everything about Adelaide, and it's like, well, hang on a second. That Wendy's hot dog shop isn't there anymore, my friend. You're living in the past, man.
Don't worry, I found the Wendy's hot dog shop, no problems.
You did. You actually sniffed it out, and it was closer to my house, and I didn't think there was one in the city, and there was.
I was ordering them to my hotel when I was in quarantine, the Wendy's hot dogs.
Yeah.
Letters of complaint.
Here we go. Here's another letter of complaint. Dear Dr. Brady Harron and Tim Hine, I've been enjoying the Unmade podcast for some time now, and I have been extremely happy about my experience consuming it. I must still complain about what I see as a glaring flaw as well as a missed opportunity. In its current form, the Unmade podcast releases around 90 minutes of podcast about every 10 days. That is about 90 minutes for every 14,400 minutes. That means that people can, at best, spend only 0.625% of their time listening to fascinating ideas for podcasts. To solve this problem, I suggest the Unmade podcast to have longer episodes released more frequently. 24-hour episodes released every 24 hours would be the best, but I would be satisfied with 20 hours every 24 hours. This seems to me as a perfectly reasonable balance between the Unmade podcast as well as keeping time for your other projects, including but not limited to sleeping, raising children, having multiple YouTube channels and other things. From Remy.
Well, I have to say our wives have that podcast and they're not patron supporters.
No, they're barely even listeners.
Imagine being in the middle of a conversation with your wife, even an argument or something like that, and you stop and you say, hang on a second, and you say, this argument's brought to you by Storyblocks. Have you heard? And you just open a laptop and start pointing out the cool features, and you go, okay, now let's get back to it.
Back to it. Do you think we could do a 20-hour episode?
I think we could. I don't think people get how we do that. How often we talk when we're not recording an episode. Which is...
I think 20 hours would be easy.
So that's so... I think so too. I think we could do that. That is an interesting idea.
Maybe we'll do it one day as a Patreon bonus.
It might be worth doing it when we're in the same city. If I'm over there or you're here or something too. That might make it a little bit easier. At least we can get up and walk around then.
Letters of complaint.
What do you think of this one? Dear Tim and Brady, I'm writing to complain about the high number of Unmade podcast episodes that feature additional content in the YouTube version. Busy, important people such as myself can only fit podcasts into their lives by listening while doing other more important tasks, and cannot spend the additional attention required to watch a video. Please kindly stop podcasting things more appropriate for visual media and stick to things more suited to audio-only media. Yours sincerely, Alex. Now, I want to point something out. The podcast is always made to be an audio podcast. We're never making it with video in mind. We do, and there's no additional audio material on the YouTube version. But thank you anyway, Alex, for giving me this excuse to point out that when I do make the YouTube version, because we post the podcast to YouTube, I do try to put pictures and bits of video and other jokes and content appropriate to what we're talking about on the YouTube version. So if you ever want to go and watch the YouTube version or sit in on one of our premieres, you should do it because it's very good fun and I do put extra time and effort into it. So please consider it. But you're not missing out on anything additional if you don't. So stop your whinging, Alex.
You can also just listen to YouTube as well and just glance at it every now and then if there's something relevant or visual. I do that as well. I was driving home today on my scooter and I was listening to an album that's not available on Apple Music, but it's on YouTube. So I just play the audio and keep it in my pocket.
Occasionally pull it out and have a little watch, see what's happening as you're scootering along.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We'll edit that bit out for legal reasons.
Tim does not watch or use his phone while riding on his scooter. I think he probably does.
No. the right question is supposed to be, tell me about the album you were listening to and why it isn't on Apple Music. And then we go down a big rabbit warren talking about the music. But I know you're not going to ask that. So that's fine. We'll move on.
All right.
Although if you're watching on YouTube, we've put a cover of the album up on the screen right now.
Nice. Wow, I wouldn't have guessed it was that album, Tim. That's fascinating.
Yep. Move on.
All right, ideas for a podcast. Should I do my idea? Because I've just got a quickie today.
Oh, yeah.
I was looking at my list last night and I just wasn't feeling the love for any of them. And then when I was reading the paper this morning, I suddenly had like a little mini idea. So I thought I'd share that one.
A mini idea. All right.
A mini idea. So like that's my way of saying not a good idea.
Yes. You'll mention it and then we'll move on quickly to Spoon of the Week.
My idea for a podcast I'm going to call... It'll be hosted by just me. It'll be a one-person podcast, so I can make the name work. Because the podcast is called Lord of the Rings. And this is a podcast where people phone in and tell me the story of a time they lost and then found a ring. Because the Times newspaper is absolutely fascinated with stories of people who lose rings and then find them. There was a story in the paper today, like a huge story, like must have been, 500-600 words, about a guy who lost his ring on the beach and then used his Strava running app to figure out roughly where he'd been walking on the beach and then called some guy with a metal detector who found it. And then he said, oh, that's good, got my ring back. So man loses ring, man finds ring is a huge story in the Times newspaper today. And newspapers are obsessed with... And people love telling their own stories of the time they lost a ring and somehow found it. There's a swimming lake near where I live, and every now and again they drain the lake so that they can refresh the water. And when they do that, people go in and find all the stuff on the bottom of the lake, and they always find an engagement ring or something, and then they find out who it belonged to. And so even where I live, there are always tales told of lost rings that have been found. So my podcast, Lord of the Rings, is phone Brady, your Lord of the Rings, and tell him your story about a ring you lost and then found. Have you ever lost and found a ring?
Not a ring, but only 1 month ago, one of my daughters lost a necklace, only 24 hours after being given it by her grandma.
Oh.
It's while we were on holidays and we were staying at a bed and breakfast. And so it's sort of an unfamiliar place. You find things more quickly in your own house, but you're somewhere else. And we were packing to go and couldn't find it anywhere. It was very tiny and it was beautiful. It was, the little brooch bit, not the actual long, chain. So it was really hard.
The little pendant had gone missing.
The pendant, that's the word I'm looking for, yeah. But it was really quite precious, like Grandma had brought it along to give to her, pass it on. So we're going, and we'd really reached the point of going, we're going to just have to say to the owners, if you find it, please let us know. We're going to... And
how long was that, Tim? Because you've got such a short attention span. Was it like 30 seconds? If it doesn't fall into my hand in the next 10 seconds, we're leaving.
We scoured back and forward and back and forward. And you start thinking, oh, no, has the dog swallowed it? And then you go, oh, no, he's not likely to swallow something like that. But I thought, I'm not having this. We're going to find this. That's ridiculous. And so I got right under the bed and, found it. And I was like, oh, hello, that looks like a glint of something. And so I didn't call out success or anything. I was just like smugly pulled the bed back and climbed over. And the little glint that I saw was something else. It was a false alarm. And I just went, I put my head down. And then suddenly there it was right in front of me. It was like, oh, wow. I'd look past it to this other glint. And so I came out and, just there's never a moment where you bathe yourself in more glory than when you found something like that.
Yeah.
Oh.
How did you break it? How did you break the news? Did you say something or did you just hold it up triumphantly? Or
I was very cool. Like I just came out and sat on the table next to her and said, yeah, there it is. There we go. And then the word went round the room. There it is. What? Have you found it? He's found it. There it is. And I was just standing there smiling. Yep. Oh, he's found it. Oh, wow.
Oh, you're amazing. You're the best dad ever.
No, I know. I just bathed in that, just nodding my head and smiling, knowingly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you sometimes just steal things from your girl so that you can have those moments?
That's genius. Why haven't I ever thought of that? That's awesome.
Dad, I've lost my car keys. Well, we'll search for an hour and then I'll just coolly walk out and pull them out of my pocket. There they are. Where they'd been for the last hour.
It is more a case of me, where's this, where's that around the house, me losing something, like my car keys, or where's my glasses case, or where's the phone, or where's the, and other members of the house helping out to find them.
Were you willing to go through Brooklyn's poo to search for the pendant? Were you in that frame of mind? All right, I'll go through the next poo.
I didn't think of that, but if faced with that situation, I would have, yes.
It passed the poo threshold.
Yes, it had. Yes. Being a pendant from Grandma, it had, it was like, oh, this is absolutely worth it. Yes.
Yeah.
That used to happen all the time with my dog Spindles when I was a little boy. Like things would turn up in his poo and you'd be like, oh my goodness, look at that. And
like what?
Well, things like, I remember when our, what do they call those? I've gone blank on the name. Beanbag. A beanbag that you sit in.
Yeah.
And, they're full of those little styrofoam beans.
Yeah.
And one of mine popped and they went everywhere. So we cleaned them all up. But of course you don't get them all. And so over the next week or so, the poo was just full of these bursting out the side.
Were you taking them out of Spindle's poo and putting them back in the beanbag? Waste not, want not.
Wash them off, collect them up. Yeah.
Why would Spindles eat those styrofoam bowls? They're not yummy.
No, I don't know. He must have just downed them, not knowing really what they were. But yeah, for a whole week, I remember them coming out. Like he must have found more and eaten them. He wouldn't eat anything else. I don't know why he loved them so much. We had to fight so hard to get him to eat anything. Brooklyn loves chewing on a peg, and that's annoying.
A clothes peg?
Yeah.
They like the feeling on their teeth and gums. I was at a spa resort type place a few years back now in the warm water areas, where everyone's just paddling around amongst all these like rocks and plants and boulders. There were all these lovely ponds and pools of lovely warm water. And you couldn't see, the water was all full of all minerals and stuff, so you couldn't really see through the water. And this lady lost her earrings. And she was looking in the water and she was like really upset because she'd lost her earrings, but you couldn't find them because you couldn't see into the water. So I just sort of swam over to where they were because there was this distress and said, oh, what's going on? And this lady said, oh, I've lost my earrings and they're really lovely. So I just slowly around that part of the pool where they were, just patted my feet on the bottom of the pool, just gently trying to find them with my toes. And suddenly I was like, and I felt with my toe this sharp metal object, and then I leaned down into the water and put my hand and pulled it out, and I pulled out like her earring and found it just with my feet, like I was reading Braille on the bottom of the pool with my toes, and then found this. I guess I got to be a real hero then. They thought I was some kind of miracle worker.
Why didn't you lift them up with your toes? It would have been more genius to sort of...
and handed it over with my feet.
Yeah, that's good.
Between my gnarly toes. Here you go.
Click it back in her ear with your toes. Here we are, madam.
Tying them back. She would have said, actually, you can keep them. If you have lost a ring and then found it again, you can either contact Tim and I and tell us your story, or contact the Times of London newspaper, because they'd love to hear from you. They bloody love that stuff. So, but there's my podcast idea.
I take my rings off when I get home every day. You can leave yours on by the looks. You've got them on there, I see.
I do. I leave my ring on all the time, yeah.
I come home and I, take my jacket off and kick off the shoes and then pull off my watch and ring and put them in a little, little holder thing, a lovely little tray. And one of my daughters says one of her eternal memories for her whole life is I come home and then the sound of that clink clink into the little tray. It's been the same little tray her whole life, and it's just such a familiar sound.
Is that inspired by like the movie Donnie Brasco? Do you do that in case you get hit that night by the mafia and you want your kids to still have your ring and watch?
No.
Oh, sponsor. Today's episode has been brought to you by Hover.
Hover.
Wow. Hover is where one goes to register domain names. It's a brilliant one-stop service for everything you want to do. Finding the names that are available, registering them, managing them, diverting them, linking them to a website or linking them off to something else you might want to link them to. I have a whole bevy of domain... What's the collective noun for domain names?
Oh, gosh.
A bevy of domain names?
A web? No.
a bite, a browse.
A browse.
A browse of domain names.
We can't go with Google or Gaggle.
A Google. I like a Google.
A Google of your name. Oh, literally it is. Yes, I guess it's a Google of.
What about a
names.
hover of domain names?
Yes. Well, that's very appropriate, isn't it? Oh, they should get that. You know what they should buy? They should buy hover.com and run with that idea.
Well, if Hover were going to register hover.com, which I believe they have, they should do it at Hover, which they can do by going to hover.com/unmade. And if they go to hover.com/unmade, they will get 10% off their first purchase. In fact, I think Hover can probably get an even bigger discount, but I don't know. Certainly our listeners will get 10% off their first registration by going to hover.com/unmade. There are a whole list of reasons you should go to them. We talk about them all the time, how good they are to use, how user-friendly, how easy it is to transfer your other domains you may already have over to Hover. I was just going through my Hover of domains earlier, Tim, to find out what ones I've got. And these are just some of the ones I have registered at the moment that are related to the Unmade podcast. Obviously, unmade.fm, spoonoftheweek.com, tommyball.fm, pulpit.com, unmade.store, twopiecefeed.band, fluffyhangers.com, spoon.cards, and timandbradygatesfoundation.org. It's like a greatest hits of our podcast there, going through my hover of domains.
Is there any room left on the internet with all those, man? You've got all of them, I think.
I've got them all. If there's some project you're working on, either now or something in the future, or some personal thing you think might be fun to register, go to hover.com/unmade, get that 10% discount as well. And we're really grateful to Hover for supporting this episode.
Absolutely. Thank you, Hover.
How easy is your job in these ads? All you do is just there at the start, when I say who the sponsor is, go, oh yeah, they're great. And at the end, just when I finish, you go, yep, absolutely.
I feel useless. I am grateful for Hover, but you just start talking and you launch into it. It's just really quite frustrating. I feel sidelined at these moments.
Is there something you'd like to say?
Oh, it's too late now. No. I'll say it. I'm going to say it directly to Hover. I'm going to email them. I'm not going to use you anymore. I'm going to thank them.
All right. It is time for Spoon of the Week. That just gets better and better, that jingle.
It does. That's a very good jingle. I'm just having a sip so I can get my voice into Spoon of the Week mode.
Oh, okay, go.
Well, Brady, this week we've got a beautiful spoon, another one in the Hind collection that I recall us purchasing. This is a sort of a canon within a canon, these, because many of them are a mystery to me. But I remember us going to Broken Hill. Now, Broken Hill is a town in what people overseas would look at on a map and say is like the outback. It's in the middle of Australia where all the capital cities are mainly around the edge. It's a mining town, mainly primarily silver, I think, maybe other things too. And this is a pretty standard kind of mining spoon. It's got a long, simple stem, a bit like, well, very appropriately really, a spade. And not only that, it has a spade on top as well as a pick. And they're actually three-dimensional, so that looks really nice. A little statue cross over, if you can imagine something like the old USSR sort of...
Hammer and sickle, yeah.
Well, that's not quite. That was a hammer and sickle. That's right. I was thinking it's the sickle, but it's the hammer and sickle, isn't it? Yes, crossed over.
Yeah.
This is a pick and a spade or a shovel, as we sometimes call it. And it looks very neat and classy, very appropriate and simple. And it's got the title Broken Hill there. Yeah. Very nice. Have you ever been to Broken Hill?
I've been to Broken Hill many times, yeah. I mean, it's a real classic family holiday place. So I've been there a few times and had to do the boring family stuff. Also, when my mum was researching our family history, I believe we went to Broken Hill because we had a lot of mining connections in the family. And I've also been to Broken Hill once or twice, I think, for work. when I was working at the Advertiser. Because although it's in New South Wales, it's closer to Adelaide than it is to Sydney. So it's kind of self-identifies as South Australian to some extent. So I've been there. It was sort of part of our patch at the Advertiser. So I was always fascinated by Broken Hill as a kid because of the name Broken Hill. Like, what kid isn't going to be fascinated by a hill that's broken? The original Mad Max movie was filmed just outside Broken Hill too, by the way.
Yes. We had a family holiday there when I was young, and that's when we got this. And I've only been there once since driving through, but that family holiday I remember very distinctly because I was able to meet Pro Hart, the very famous Australian painter, who Dad just happened to mention he was friends with, and from years ago somehow, and called up, and we went round there. And I really didn't know Pro Hart existed until I got there and realised this is a mansion of a house, and he's obviously got painting stuff everywhere, and then there's a gallery as part of the house which had heaps of painting, and we walked around. He ordered pizza, which arrived by a taxi, and I was just amazed at that, like just blown away that someone would order pizza with a taxi. And
like, because it was so decadent, and like, you know, it was like it's an extra expense having to pay for the taxi and stuff.
I mean, getting a taxi, when we were young, getting a taxi was kind of a big deal anyway.
It was like a limo, yeah.
Yeah. But the idea that you'd order a taxi just to bring the pizza to your house to save you going out just felt like, just incredible, ridiculous.
I want to play the Tim tells stories of when he was poor music again.
Well, I mean, you probably had, pizzas being driven all over the city for you, I know. But I mean, back in our day, it wasn't always done. But
I had them helicoptered in.
That's right. But that was a great night. So he walked around and showed us his paintings and all that kind of stuff. That was really cool. And when I got back to school, and we said what we did on our holidays, and I said that I had dinner with Pro Hart, the teacher was like really amazed and all that kind of stuff. And it's only since that I realised, he's a very well-known painter. And he signed a bunch of prints and gave them and books and stuff. Very generous. So that's my biggest memory of Broken Hill.
Didn't you also get your Royal Flying Doctor Service spoon when you were in Broken Hill?
I did too, yes. That was the same trip. Yes, nearby.
Are you liking how I'm reminiscing about your holiday here?
Yes, that was a great trip. Do you know the other thing that happened on that trip? We went out to Silverton, which is a little town just outside Broken Hill, and they were shooting a movie, and like a proper, motion picture. And we stood, just an Australian motion picture, but still, with lots of extras and cameras and caravans and stuff. And we stood there and watched that for a while, and that was, as a kid, that was just amazing as well, just phenomenal to see. I think it was a film called A Place to Call Home or something like that, and it aired on television a bit later on, and we could see the scene that we saw being filmed, and that made just the back of my head explode with excitement. That was incredible. The
thing you said, though, that has really touched a nerve with me is how exciting taxis were when you were a little kid. Because you would never because taxis were like a bit of an expensive thing. And you're being driven by a stranger, and there was this weird machine in the front with money ticking up, and you were watching the money go up, and it also not only was exciting, it seemed almost like a bit out of control and expensive, and oh my god, another 10 cents just went on the price, and hardly anything happened. Watching that bill go up was kind of, and when you were the one paying for it when you got a bit older, getting a taxi was a really nerve-wracking experience as you watch that bill go up and up and up. And it's like getting closer and closer to the amount of money you actually have in your pocket.
I wonder if I can remember the first time I caught a taxi on my own. I don't know when it would have been, as a young adult, late teen somewhere. Gosh.
I think there's been at least one time I've gotten out of a taxi because they've hit the amount of money I had on me. I've said, I'm going to have to get out of here, mate, because that's all the money I've got.
You're a big taxi driver talker, aren't you? I remember you'd sit and chat, and one night you got caught talking about something from work as a journalist, or even when you were a cadet even, and you said, I end up spending like half an hour sitting at the curb just explaining this matter to the taxi driver.
Oh, right.
And having a massive conversation.
I don't know, it sounds like something I'd do. Anyway. Golden. So anyway, that spoon will be on the website. Spoon of the week. Lovely. Yeah, little three-dimensional representation at the top. Quality spoon, that. Quality spoon. I like it. I like it a lot.
Very meta. It's a sort of it's a shovel on top of a spoon shaped like a shovel. You know what I mean? There's lots of it's a spoon is smaller than a shovel.
You cut off the Scoopy bit in the picture you sent to me. You've gone back to absolute terrible photography. And, like, it's in a shadow and you've cut the bottom off and it's like, it's a terrible photo. I hope you send me a better one later.
That's only the one I send before the episode. I do a professional shoot the next day, which is to say I get one of my daughters to take a professional shot and then send it to you.
Yeah.
Because apparently she's a fantastic photographer. So,
all right. Well, Tim, this week, for our winners, we're going to announce the winner of an Unmade podcast commemorative souvenir spoon. We give away one every episode to a lucky Patreon supporter. And also 10 of our Patreon supporters, aka stakeholders, will receive some Spoon of the Week collector cards in the post. 10 of you are going to get those. And this week, Tim, I have taken the names of the winners and I have buried them in the rock and soil of Broken Hill. And I'm going to ask you to mine your way through Broken Hill to find the names of these winners and announce them. Are you willing to do that?
I am. Yes.
You got your pick and shovel at the ready?
I am. Here we go. Oh, here we go. Yes, we've found the winner of the spoon, which is Simon H. from Stockholm in Sweden. Congratulations, Simon. Fantastic.
Well done. Sweden, wow. I've been to a mine in Stockholm. In fact, one of the few times I have filmed at a little mine was in Stockholm because I went to the little mine or quarry where they first found 4 elements on the periodic table.
Wow.
At a place called Ytterby on the outskirts of Stockholm.
You've been everywhere, really, haven't you?
I've been everywhere, man.
You have. All right, here we go. I found some more.
Right.
Oh, this is a rich vein here. Jeffrey L. from Ontario in Canada. Ian C. from Melbourne in Australia. Hello to Melbourne. Joe E. from Kentucky in the USA. Thomas Y. from London, which is still in England. Peggy Y. from California. Peter J. from Hobart in Tasmania. Hello, Peter. Marlon from Ireland. Sam H. from Victoria, Australia. Tobias from Berlin. And Kathy from St. Louis in the USA. Congratulations, everybody.
Those people, you're all getting cards. Spoon of the Week collector cards. And thank you for being stakeholders. We really appreciate our Patreon supporters. You can go to patreon.com/unmadefm if you would like to join them. And we've always got all sorts of bonuses and extra bits and pieces and love coming your way. But we also love, we love all the listeners too, don't we? You know, we love you all equally.
Thank you, Hover.
All right. Tim, have you got an idea for a podcast?
Oh, hello. Yes, I do. My idea is inspired by Adelaide itself, but I know there are examples of this all over the place. We talk a lot about the sofa shop, and you would have to say that the sofa shop is probably the greatest shop of all time. My podcast idea is about the worst shop of all time. And I'm not talking about Berkowitz. I'm talking about...
Poor Berkowitz gives a new lease of life to all these employees who are going to lose their jobs when the sofa shop closes down. Comes along, keeps the shop going, and now they're absolute mortal enemies of the podcast.
Oh, no, it was a massive takeover. It's a disgrace.
It was a hostile takeover.
Hostile takeover. Hostile takeovers are always framed as being, you know, the saviours of the company and for the employees, but no, this was unwanted. Anyway, I'm talking more about, you know, that shop you've walked into and you can hardly believe it's a shop. It's like, what is this? They mix and match.
But bad ones you don't like. Because eclectic shops can be quite fun, but
no.
terrible ones.
No. Eclectic shop in a bad way. Or just the worst shop I've ever been to, really.
The worst shop I've ever been to.
The worst shop, that's what it's called. Not the sofa shop, the worst shop. Like, you know, there's shops you've been into and they sell secondhand combs, you know, with a... You think,
What, just that? Nothing else? That's their specialty.
Those second-hand comb shops.
Wow, I don't know where you're hanging out. There's a whole street of them. Okay.
It's like, we'll put them all together. It'll be known as the comb area of town, and people will come and try them out.
Yep.
I got this idea because I went into a shop I'm cautious here because I'm talking about a real shop, but let's just say it's in South Australia, and it's a chemist, and I guess you sort of assume a chemist or a pharmacy, as they're called, or a drugstore in America, to have a certain integrity about them because the person there is qualified and they're selling important, medicine.
Yeah.
So they have a certain dignity about them. Not this place.
No.
So
Is it part of a chain or is it just a one-off independent pharmacy?
I think it's just one-off.
Okay.
It's hard to tell because the sign's very faded. So
Right. And what's wrong with it when you go in there?
you walk in, and literally the first thing you see walking into this chemist is a collection of second-hand chairs that are for sale. And they're lined up along the entranceway. And we went in once the other day and there were 4 dining chairs. And they look like they're not a complete set. Even though there's 4,
Right.
I know it's probably 4 of 6, but just the way they look.
Yeah.
And then there's another random office chair sitting, and they've just got a piece of paper stuck to them with $5, $20 written in text. And I'm like, this is a chemist. This is a semi-medical environment.
Yeah.
And there's chairs. But then you walk deeper to bathe into the professionalism of the medical environment to get the things you need. And there's plates and there's crockery, and then suddenly in the midst of all that, there's some exercise equipment, and so somehow that's been positioned right next to the crockery, and then you turn the corner, and then in the corner there's one of those really old-fashioned weighing machines. You know how you used to put 20 cents in to weigh yourself? So they're like huge, big things, and it's there.
And you can weigh yourself, or are they selling the machine?
No, the machine. I don't know. I imagine it's there. I imagine it's there to weigh yourself, but it's hard to tell because there's lots of other machinery there. That's the kind of thing you shouldn't be selling. There's a big medical equipment which looks like it should be either sending out radiation or it looks like a restart your heart kind of thing. What do they call it? Like a cardiogram? Defibrillator, but a really big old-fashioned thing. That's sitting there next to a massive pile of toilet paper. And then
Are you looking at pictures of it right now?
I am. I took pictures covertly when I was in there, and I'm pulling them up because I can. And I'm even more amazed by my photos than I was then, because then there's a lounge suite, right there in the middle of the
It is a sofa shop.
It is a sofa shop. It's just.
I'm getting a vibe from the way you're talking. You've been into this place multiple times.
I have. Yeah.
Well, why do you keep going back?
I guess.
For the chairs.
Several times. I'm just a fan of their fabric. There's lots of pictures and prints laying up against the wall, and then there's a whole line of computer monitors. But this is all in a chemist. It's literally still a chemist, and so there's all
where you could go to buy life-saving medicine and prescriptions and stuff.
That's right. And there's a presumably qualified pharmacist who's there to dispense it and all the rest of it. And there's Band-Aids and
people. I've never seen Tim's eyes open as wide as they are right now as he looks back at his pictures. He does look mildly in shock.
And then there's just ribbon, there's haberdashery and stuff like that.
Something I don't like in shops that you're reminding me of, and I'm not totally condemning it because I still do sometimes like these shops, but you know how there are 2 kinds of antiques secondhand shops, right?
Yeah.
There are ones that obviously have a threshold, like a bar that you must go over to have the stuff in the shop, and everything's expensive and nice and has been reconditioned and looks as best it can. And then you get those secondhand shops that will have some absolute gems and amazing stuff, but then they'll also have just a plastic box of crap that you can't believe they've put there, and it will have Matchbox cars, but they're still like dirty. Like the kids have just finished playing with them, and there'll be like a hairpin in there and stuff like that, and like like one playing card, and all like someone's just obviously taken all the crap from their house and thrown it in a box and just said, will someone be stupid enough to buy something? Like,
yes,
I don't like those dirty boxes that you have to. I still rummage through them in case there's something cool in there, but the dirty box of old children's toys.
I think there's something probably about the owners of places like this that they can't bear to throw something away because they've had a lifetime of being constantly surprised what people come in looking for. So they just look at a box of crap like that and they can't throw it away. They think, well, I'll just let it sit there. And even though this is the funny, they're going to make 10 cents off one item and 5 cents off another item, and it can't be worth the square meterage of having it sitting there.
Or it could be like that guy near where I live the other day who put his old crappy spoons out the front of his house, and I came and paid 20 quid for them.
He would never have thought. He's putting those spoons out there thinking, I bet a podcaster comes along who features souvenir spoons and he'll just be right in the zone. It's like you are just right in the zone of his ideal customer.
I wonder how this chemist would feel knowing that they've just been featured in the first ever example of a podcast called The Worst Shop Ever.
I'm sure it's a perfectly good chemist, and you'll get that's surely the only thing people go in there for. Like, surely you go in there for its primary purpose. But for some reason, he's looked at all this space and thought, if I pile this, if I let people store crap in here, like if I basically go along on hard rubbish day, pick up stuff and fill the rest of the place with it, I'm going to do more business. There's also like a sort of a defunct coffee sort of area that I saw once, and that's next to a sign that says this area is out of bounds. So it's not even we're not serving coffee or it's closed, it's out of bounds. And it's like, oh man, that's a sign that needs to be at the front door.
Because that sounds fun. That shop sounds awesome. I want to go there.
Have you got examples of? I mean, what do you think about this as a podcast idea? Like,
yeah, I like it. I like hearing people describe weird shops. The shops that they have here that I feel that way about are the big chains of really cheap stuff. Like there's one called B&M Bargains, and shops like that are just those huge shops, like Cheap as Chips in Adelaide.
Yeah.
You know, those shops where it's just full of cheap tat that doesn't cost much, and it's just got everything. You know, you'll find tennis balls next to barbecue shapes and things like that, and like they just get like a job lot on something. They get like a bargain on 10,000 tennis balls. They say, okay, this week we're selling tennis balls for $1 each and stuff like that. So there's a few shops like that, and like B&M Bargains is a big one here. But I go there all the time because there's always something you need that you don't know where else to buy it. Like something you just didn't know you were going to need. Like I need 18 balls of string, or I need a pink hula hoop or something like that. For some weird reason, I need something for like a video or something. And you think, you've got Amazon obviously, but if you need it straight away and it's just something really random, I just think, I bet if I go to B&M Bargains, I'll find something that'll do the trick. And like probably 7 times out of 10 you do. So although I don't like those shops, I am kind of grateful for them.
I think they're called dime stores in the US. I've seen that in novels.
And you get dollar shops or pound stores you have here, but this isn't quite a pound store where everything's a pound.
Oh yeah.
They will have like furniture, like garden furniture and stuff like that, but it's just really low end stuff. Two things that these stores are really good for. The first one is art supplies for the kids. Like, you know, to get those canvases and stuff. If you go to an art supply store, everything is astronomically expensive. Yeah.
And you go to these places, they're like $2, $1. You buy a bunch of canvases and paints and stuff. So they're literally handy for that stuff. The other thing they're good for is DVDs of recent Nicolas Cage movies.
Yeah.
There's films you can go through DVDs and stuff in a place like this and never see a title you've ever heard before or ever been advertised anywhere. It's the ultimate B-movie locale.
The other good thing they're good for is rolls of brown paper, because my number file videos, I get all my mathematicians to write on brown paper, and sometimes I'll be like in some town I haven't been to before, and I desperately need brown paper so the mathematician I'm meeting we can use it as a prop. And sometimes you just can't find it anywhere, and then you go into the local dime store and they'll have dozens and dozens of rolls of brown paper, so they're good for brown paper too. But they are places sometimes you feel a bit icky going into them anyway.
There's some things, the furniture's kind of stapled together, and
yeah.
You know what I mean? The mats will fall apart, and the carpet,
I bought like a mini garden seat at one of those things to take to a music festival. Not like a full garden chair, not like a full deck chair, but just one basically just for your butt with 3 little metal struts to hold it up so you could just plonk it down somewhere and watch it. And I put it down, and I was watching something with 3 or 4 of my friends, watching a musician on stage, and I sat down on it, and within 10 seconds of sitting on it, it just went splat like a pancake, and I went straight down on my butt, and my friends laughed for hours about that. And I was cursing that store for selling me that terrible chair. Couldn't even hold my slender frame.
That story could have gone either way, because it could be one of those, I paid $2 for it, and that was 20 years ago, and I'm still using it at concerts today. But no, it was it lasted less than a song.
All right. Worst shop, worst store. Good idea. I like it. Fun podcast. Do you want to hear a few more letters of complaint about our podcast?
Yeah, I'd like to hear a real, one that really is nasty. Are there any that are sort of, that really will make me feel defensive and will get other people worked up on our behalf? And is there anything like that at all?
This one's a little bit political and a little bit woke. See if this one does it for you.
Letters of complaint.
Dear Tim and Brady, my name is Liam and I've been a level 5 vegan for the past almost 21 years. My concern arose when you began using the term stakeholder as a title for your Patreon supporters. When you adopted the term, I believe you unknowingly excluded many of the strong-minded and well-read individuals by only referring to people who support your podcast as people who hold cuts of meat in their hands. I, for one, do not like the feeling of meat within my hands and would never be seen holding a steak, yet alone enjoy the title of stakeholder. To combat this exclusion of your audience, I would recommend using a title along the lines of farmers or farmhands. With this, you include both people that like to hold steak and those who prefer to hold vegetables. I look forward to hearing from you. Best regards, Liam.
The avocado holder or something like that might work a little bit better.
Yes.
And for all those little listeners out there, the steak we refer to for a stakeholder is an S-T-A-K-E stake, and that you have a stake in something, or you put a stake down in the ground.
Indeed. And I'm sure Liam knows that too. I'm sure Liam
he does.
Stirring the veggie pot there.
Oh, yes. I love that he didn't take offence to the avalanche of mentions of chicken and fried chicken that we get into every day. That doesn't offend him, but it's the stakeholder that does.
It's the steak. Well, you can't complain about KFC. It's manna from heaven.
That's right.
Letters of complaint.
I'm writing to complain about Tommyball and Tommyball news. I am a major fan and I always try to keep up with all the news, tidbits and small talk. But recently, since last month, all the major sports media and news outlets have gone dry on Tommyball topics, game results and news. There are a few highlights every once in a while, but that is disappointingly all there is nowadays. So this brings me to my solution. Since the Unmade podcast seems to have a co-host with a very surprising amount of details about the game and news around it. So I suggest that every podcast there is a small segment where the hosts update the listeners about Tommyball news and game results to resolve this catastrophic issue. Sincerely, Evan.
Has been a little while since we've had some Tommyball content. What do you think about this? A little a 1 minute Tommyball update or something?
Something that just occurred to me, just as I finished reading that, and I wouldn't actually do this, but it would be a funny thing to do, is at the end of every episode, or at some point in every episode, we do, as a public service, just Tommyball scores, and we just read out the scores and the results, but we don't talk about it. It's not like, our Tommyball episodes with Tommyball Tim, where, we you know, we talk and we have fun and stuff, it would just be like reading of results and numbers and all these obscure words, and no context is ever given, nothing's ever said, and we just move on to the next thing. Like, you know, that would be quite funny.
Just like the news, the scores on the radio. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Like
nice.
a weather update or something. But yeah.
Letters of complaint.
Here we go. Here's another one. I think you'll like this one. Dear Tim and Brady, after hearing your latest podcast, A Letter of Complaint, I felt compelled to write and complain. As an avid listener and Patreon supporter, I can't help but write this in Brady's I'm reading out a letter or email voice. I have made the sentences short to help with the cadence. However, now we are out of the introduction and into the meat of the email, note the slight change in Brady's tone of voice, I can now move on to my complaint.
That's very good.
What were you guys thinking? You had a wide open goal and you missed it. You didn't even take the shot. I am, of course, talking about the Tim and Brady scholarship. The moment it was mentioned, I knew it was for up-and-coming Tommyball players, and yet nothing. Instead, some half-baked idea about people who've got the correct letters in their names. Should the Tim and Brady gate prove the success we all know it will be, I trust the scholarship idea will be revisited and young Tommyball players the country over will get the same advantages in their early years that you both did. I shall now leave you with Brady's I'm wrapping up the email voice and that slight slowdown we reach during the sign-off. Yours disappointedly, Dom. P.S. I play a lot of EVE Online and there is a faction called the Triglavians. My dyslexia and far too much Unmade podcast has resulted in me reading it as the Traralgans. This amuses me more than it should.
That's great.
There we go.
That's a very clever letter.
Dear Dr. Brady Harron, this one's just addressed to me. Sorry, Tim. I'm writing to complain about the name of your podcast, the Unmade Podcast. I can only presume that I am one of the great majority of listeners who have stayed silent on this issue for too long, but in light of recent hypocrisy, I can no longer ignore the voice of my conscience and must speak out against these blatant falsehoods. The fact of the matter is, with many pilot episodes and a brilliant series of interviews with the Tommyball legend Tim Hine, the name The Unmade Podcast fails to give an adequate description of the show's content. A new name such as The Half-Made Podcast, the Mostly Unmade Podcast, or as Mr. Hine might call it, podcast about discussing podcast ideas and not really making them except sometimes, must be decided upon. The exact solution to this problem I leave to the professionals, but I hope that the issue is soon rectified and the reputation of the podcast restored. As it stands, the current name is not only misleading, but unequivocally false and a constant annoyance to all those who have listened thus far. Yours truly, John.
Well, thank you, John. It's a good name, the Unmade Podcast. I'm still happy with it myself.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna stick with it. I think for now, I think it would be a lot of hassle to change it.
It would be fun to find pieces of paper where we may have jotted down early ideas of what to call this podcast.
I've got that stuff. I've even got logos for some of those other names.
Oh, that's gold.
Yeah. It exists. That will be like part of our, I don't know, our 1,000 episode celebration.
Yes.
Crack some of that out and yeah.
Two hipsters jiving. I think that was one of them, wasn't it?
Do you know what? I was reading, because of our last episode, I was reading a lot about the song You're So Vain by Carly Simon.
Oh, yeah.
And there's always been this mystery about who she wrote it about, who was the topic of it. And there've been a couple of people who she's revealed it to. And there was once some auction or something as well, some charity thing where the prize was Carly Simon would tell you exactly who the song was about. And then she told that person, confidentially. So maybe we could do the same thing with like all our original names for the podcast, and we could have it like as a prize, and for like, some small amount, I don't know, $200,000, $300,000, we would tell that one person what some of the original names were going to be, as long as they keep it a secret.
That would be pretty cool. Let's go.
I wonder if people are going to start trying to figure out some of those names. I like two. What was it? Two hipsters jiving. Was that your?
Two hipsters jiving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
alternative names.
The Tim and Brady podcast featuring Tim and Brady.
Yeah, that's right. It is funny how in America they have, perhaps they do it in the UK too, they have a famous person and they call it the show after them, you know, like The Cosby Show or The Merv Griffin Show. And then
yeah.
That's
Jimmy
I think that's
Carson,
weird.
Yeah.
They don't name it after the character or the circumstance. They just go right out there and go, well, you've got a show, and we're going to name the show after you, and then...
Yeah, because the Cosby Show was weird like that, because it was called The Cosby Show because Bill Cosby was very famous. But then it was a fictional show about a family called the Huxtables.
Yeah.
Like, he wasn't called Cosby. Like, there was no Cosby in it in any way.
No, it wasn't even like, you know, Seinfeld, where he uses the same name or adapts it slightly.
No,
it was
he
bizarre.
was Mr. Huxtable, yeah. It was Huxtable, wasn't it? I can't remember what his first name was.
Huxtable, yeah. Cliff.
I think Bill Cosby's another actor we're not supposed to talk about anymore.
Oh, dear.
All right. Well, thank you to everyone who complained. Thank you, Tim, for your time.
I've got one word in. I haven't got the other word in.
Oh, right.
And the other word's a really hard one, and I can't even think how to get it in.
What was it? And I'll tell you how you could have got it in.